The richest empire on earth is coming for you. Its armies are veterans of Italy, of Africa, even South and North America, and its king commands gold from across the oceans. You're a scattering of provinces, bickering over religion and trade. But somehow, you're about to fight that empire. Not a single battle, not for 1 year, but for the next 80 years. This is the 80 Years' War. Our story starts in the Low Countries, modern-day Belgium, the Netherlands and Luxembourg, and some parts of northern France. In the mid-1500s, these provinces were under the rule of King Philip II of Spain, a devout Catholic, and a micromanager extraordinaire, a man who believed that God had personally appointed him to be Europe's morality police. The Low Countries at this point are incredibly wealthy, bustling, and many cities are very Protestant. Philip does not approve of this, given that he's a devout Catholic. He sends in his regents and bishops to crack down on the heresy, which in his mind means burning books, some churches, and even some people. And in 1566, resentment boils over. The nobles present the compromise of the nobility, politely asking Philip, just, chill out a bit, please. You're a bit overboard right now. His regent, the Duchess of Parma, dismisses them as beggars, and this name sticks. Soon, Protestant mobs are just smashing Catholic statues in what becomes known as the iconoclastic fury. They were unhappy with the symbols that they believed were idols. Philip's response? Send in a man who, makes Tywin Lannister look like a kindergarten teacher. Fernando Alvarez de Toledo, the Duke of Alba. The Duke of Alba arrives in the Low Countries with 10,000 soldiers. He sets up something called the Council of Troubles, better known as the Council of Blood, and uses this to proceed to execute hundreds of nobles and thousands of rebels. William of Orange, later called the Silent, who at this point is one of the prominent leaders of the rebellion, flees into exile, but he begins to plot resistance. He's not a particularly fiery speechmaker with incredibly personable charisma, but he's a patient chess player. And in 1568, the first battles of what would become the 80 Years' War erupt. Quick spoiler alert, at this point the rebels lose, but the war has just begun. For years, William's forces fight a guerrilla-style war, but with very little success, until fate intervenes at sea. In 1572, a group of rebel privateers, otherwise known as pirates, known as the Sea Beggars, are kicked out of English ports. Desperate, they capture the small town of Bruyère, almost by accident. But this sparks uprisings across Holland and Zeeland, for parts of the population that hadn't yet joined the rebellion. Spain retaliated with horror. The Spanish fury at Antwerp in 1576 saw mutinous troops sack the city, killing thousands. And even Catholic provinces of the Low Countries were now disgusted with Philip's rule, leading to the pacification of Ghent, which was a rare moment of unity between the north and the south of the Low Countries, which was traditionally the religious divide. But unity doesn't last. Religious divisions resurface, and Philip sent in another general, Alexander Farnese, Duke of Parma, a brilliant strategist who reconquered much of the south portion of the Low Countries. And then tragedy strikes. In 1584, William of Orange, leader of the rebels, is assassinated by a Catholic zealot. It's the first recorded political assassination that was done with a handgun. And after William's death, leadership passes to his son, Maurice of Nassau. He's a lot sharper militarily, but a lot less patient politically. The north forms the Union of Utrecht, which essentially declares independence of all these provinces as the Dutch Republic, as part of the United Provinces. This happens in 1581, though of course Spain refuses to recognise this. The war becomes exhausting, a back and forth. Spain lays siege to key towns, and the Dutch flood their own land to stop armies, opening their own dikes to create inland seas. The Kingdom of England, under Queen Elizabeth I, sends troops to aid the Dutch, partly to harass Philip, who's already plotting his Spanish Armada disaster. And by the early 1600s, both sides are drained. Spain is fighting wars on multiple fronts, and the Dutch are tired of bleeding money and men. In 1609, they signed the 12 Years' Truce. This is more like a ceasefire, not a peace. It's just a pause in the action. And as we all guessed, the war resumed in 1621 because it now got kind of tangled interwoven into the 30 Years' War, which was a wider European conflict happening at the time. And the 30 Years' War was also very driven by religious divide. The Dutch navy at this point grows into more of a powerhouse, cutting into Spain's trade routes. And a lot of overseas colonies become part of the conflict, with battles being fought all the way from Brazil to the East Indies. And by the 1640s, Spain was collapsing under debt. They were facing rebellion in Portugal, and just war. It was endless. And finally, in 1648, the Treaty of Münster recognised the independence of the Dutch Republic. And this same year, the final peace treaty for the 30 Years' War was also signed. 80 years after the first shot of this war, it was over, and the Dutch emerged victorious, becoming a major trading and naval power, and Spain began its long decline. The 80 Years' War wasn't just about religion or taxes. It was about identity, about whether a people could define themselves against one of the most powerful empires in history and win. It cost lots of generations of youth, turned cities to rubble, drained treasuries dry. But it also birthed the republic that would come to dominate world trade for about a century. So next time you're frustrated by a slow project, just, remember, at least it's not going to take you 80 years or an entire lifetime. Thanks for watching. I hope that you enjoyed. Consider dropping a like and subscribing. It really helps the channel, and I'll see you next time.